that. That's right. All together, like 300 of it. You go to the guy.
Okay, everybody, let's get started. We'll take a minute to silence your phones, if you don't mind, or put them on vibrate. And okay. All right, this is the engineering department. We try to do something called a lunch and learn, maybe every quarter, and so this one we decided to just throw the net a little bit wider, invite some more people, you guys from the plant and stuff, and of course this is all approved by our boss, Bob Vintanger, VP of Engineering. I'm George McCall, Hydraulic Lab Manager. Anyways, I want to welcome y'all here today. Next slide. The whole idea behind this particular talk was from Bob Louthan. He's our rigging guy. In fact, he bought the pizza, so why don't we just give him a hand? Thank you Bob is, we've known each other for over 10 years. He's my go-to rigging guy for any kind of challenging rigging. It's nice, he's close, he can come meet with us. This was super fun. Our challenges are low overhead and low crane capacity, so we have to find the right rigging gear. And anyways, got us out of some tight spots when it comes to rigging. Also, he has some of his own products he's designed and patented. Safer ways to store rigging, handle rigging, stuff like that. So anyway, so we've got a good working relationship with him. And when he suggested this talk, I thought it was a really great idea. So next slide, please. Now our guest here is Dr. Mac Louthan. I'll tell you a little bit about him. Go ahead. He entered Virginia Tech in 1956, got his bachelor's degree in 1960. And he went to work at Savannah Riverside. And then he went back to get his master's degree. He was only at Savannah Riverside 3 months, and went back and got his master's degree in 9 months. Then he went into the Army, 61 to 63. And he went back to Savannah Riverside, 62 to 67. Then he went off and got his PhD in metallurgy at Notre Dame. And then back to Savannah Riverside. I think they kept a stack of his HR paperwork just like fresh on the table there. Just sign when he walked in. And then back at Virginia Tech to be a professor for 12 years. That's okay. And then back to Savannah Riverside where he eventually retired. So during that period, next slide, for metallurgy and things like that, I guess the main organization is American Society of Materials. He's a fellow. That's the highest honor they can bestow on you. Next slide. Also continues to serve as an advisor at Savannah River National Laboratory. And if you just go through and look at the societies and journals he's been associated with and awards he's won, it's just too many to mention. We could fill up the whole time here talking about all the things he's done. I like to point out that when you hit your junior year in college, that's when you really start to get into your major. So that for him was 60 years ago this year. So think about it. He's been thinking about metallurgy for 60 years, 1958, 2008. Like I said, numerous awards, written several books, hundreds of papers, hundreds of presentations, internationally renowned. And this particular talk he's going to give to us, Why Stuff Falls Apart, he's giving it to all students of all ages, industry and government groups, professional groups, international conferences, things like that. So my hope is that these people can understand it. I got a chance too. So without more further ado, we'll get started. Let me switch over here. So Mac, I'll do the slides for you. Would you please come up? Let's give Mac welcome.
Thank you, George. I have often wanted to be introduced with just the statement, "Here's Mac." That would show that people knew who I was. Now, this introduction showed that nobody here knew who I was, and you had to explain it. I want to tell you how this talk got started. At Virginia Tech, when I was there as a professor, we gave a student body $50,000 to get some well-renowned speakers for a thing called Not Your Average Lecture Series. and they had Bob Hope make a presentation. Henry Kissinger made a presentation. And people like that were presenting, and I got a phone call. And a student said, Dr. Louthan, we'd like for you to speak in the spring Not Your Average Lecture Series. My head got really big. I said, why do you want me to speak? I'm thinking he's going to say you're one of the best professors at Virginia Tech, or we enjoyed your lecture. He said, well, truth is, Dr. Louthan, we've run out of money and we need somebody that's free. So that's how this talk got started. And I sort of looked at a whole lot of different failures, and I found out that virtually every failure, whether it's a metallurgical failure or mechanical engineering failure or industrial engineering failure, virtually every failure, it falls into one of 6 categories, right? And if you have the next slide, George, if you put those up there, they're the same. Anybody here go to a Southeastern Conference University? I'll read these for you. Improper design, poor material selection, defects in materials, and you'll notice materials is listed a whole lot. And materials cause a lot of problems, but they also solve a lot of problems. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through these 6 fundamental causes of failure one at a time and give you some examples. Most of the examples I give you are true. Most of the examples I give you are true. All right. Some of them are embellished a little bit. Right? But if we'll start with improper design, you saw when George introduced me, he said, I went to Virginia Tech, 1956. Virginia Tech in 1956 was a military school. Every freshman had to be in the Corps of Cadets. I had to learn to walk on the right hand, 6 inches of the sidewalk. Right? If there were 6 of us freshmen walking together, we had to go one behind another, all of us walking on the right hand, 6 inches of the sidewalk. They call that a rat line, because that's what they call the freshmen, rats. Rats had to go to their holes. That was our room. You had to leave your hole unlocked so an upperclassman could come in. Had to wear a white cloth belt on your uniform. That's so anybody that saw you knew you were a rat. When you got to be a sophomore, you could wear a black leather belt. When you got to be, and you could walk anywhere you wanted to on the sidewalk. When you got to be a junior, you could walk on the grass. When you got to be a senior, you could lock your door. Eric was a senior. Everybody in our class hated Eric. You all have met people like Eric. Eric was about 6'6", weighed about 230 pounds, all muscle, starting fullback on the football team, starting forward on the basketball team, made straight A's. Everything he touched turned to gold. You've met people like that, haven't you? Yeah. Hate them, don't you? we all hated Eric, and this particular spring day, Eric made a mistake. He left the windows to his room wide open. 3rd floor, Eggleston Hall. We went on either side of Eric's room, took a rope and swung it across so we could get a handle to go from the room next to Eric into Eric's room. Used that rope and the ledge, crawled into Eric's room. took some tools, disconnected his radiator from the wall, tied a rope around the radiator, took the radiator over and hung it out the window. Two of us to get the radiator to hang out the window. Took the rope back across the room and tied it to the doorknob. Crawled back out the window. Every freshman in the company was out there in the hall waiting for Eric to come back from the library. He comes back from the library. He's got his big old keychain on his black leather belt. He's swinging that keychain, room all locked up, and he's just strutting down the hall, and he gets to the door, and he sticks the key in, unlocks the door, and our plan, our design, our thought would be that the key would be jerked out of his hand and the key in the door would go across the room, but we didn't think about the chain on the black leather belt. And Eric and the door went across the room and slammed up against the window. Now that's an example of an improper design. Now think about that. None of us would have done that had we been by ourselves. It took peer pressure. Now you all don't encounter much peer pressure, but you encounter cost and schedule pressures. You encounter the boss telling you to get something done. Right? Today I'm walking around and there's a scrap yard back there where you mix scrap up to make a melt so that you can make a pour. You go back to the scrap yard and the proper stuff isn't there. You find a good substitute real quick. Those are the kind of pressures you face. And if you don't do what's right, look at what happened at this wedding hall, May 2001. Building design changed. They decided that what was supposed to be the roof would not be a roof, it would be the floor. Now this is a big building with engineers and architects working on it. And they decided that the roof would be the floor, but the roof wasn't level enough. So they come in and they pour concrete, smooth it out to get a level floor and eliminate the sagging. Nothing in the design was built to hold that extra 2 inches of concrete all the way across the roof of the material. But it's there. It's working. And they have met their cost and schedule in getting the building design changed. And then they have a host a big wedding party in that room that they made. And the roof collapses, or what used to be the roof collapses. 23 people died. 380 people were injured because a group of engineers, architects, and construction workers said, hey, pressure is more important than doing what's right. We work hard to get good designs. We work hard to get good schedules. And all too often, peer pressure, schedule pressure, causes us to alter what we're supposed to do, and we don't do the right thing. Now, you all are probably, I'll say, never going to do something that's going to lead to 23 people dying. But what can it lead to? What can it lead to? Let's look at what happens if we get our design right but select the wrong material. Next slide. After you saw how I went back to Virginia Tech several times, went to Savannah River more times than I went back to Virginia Tech, but I went back to Virginia Tech to teach. One of the reasons I went back to Virginia Tech to teach was I could play basketball in the NBA if I went back. That stands for Noontime Basketball Association. And every Monday and Wednesday and Friday, a group of old guys would get together and we'd play basketball. This particular Friday, it is snowing like mad. I've got to walk across the drill field to get to the War Memorial Gym where I can play basketball. And this boy and girl are walking across there in front of me, and I get up behind them, and I eavesdropped on their conversation. I listened to what they were saying to each other, and this young man says to the lady, "What are you doing Saturday night?" And she said, "Nothing." You know, she said it in a really sweet voice. She said, "Nothing." And he starts talking about going to the movie, going to a fraternity party, all sorts of stuff they're going to do. And I'm thinking, man, I'm seeing a romance getting developed here. I'm seeing a romance start out. And the girl looks at the guy and says, "You sound like you think we got a date Saturday night." And he said, "I thought we did. I asked you what you were doing and you said nothing." She said, "Yeah, but I'd rather do nothing than go out with you." Now that's an example of poor material selection. There were 10,000 women on the Virginia Tech campus at that time, and he picked her. Why'd he pick her? I can tell you why he picked her. She was cute. She was right there. How often do we pick something because it's cute and available rather than looking to pick what's the right thing for the job we're going to do? World War II. U.S. entered into the largest shipbuilding exercise they've ever had. Built a huge number of Liberty ships, T2 tankers. 1,000 of those developed large cracks. By large cracks, I mean a crack either 10 feet long or a crack with an opening over 10 inches in diameter. Over 10 inches wide. 1,000 of them developed. Some of the ships broke in half. By the early 1940s, we knew why the ships broke in half. Ductile to brittle transition temperature in the steels. Steels have, and you all got plastic garbage, you don't live in the cold country. But my garbage man knows when my plastic garbage can has gone from being ductile to being brittle. When it gets cold in the winter. In the summer, he takes that garbage can and he handles it real carefully. He sets it down. In the winter, when it's cold, he sets the garbage can down and drop kicks it back into the yard. All right? Puts a hole in it. It becomes brittle. All of us know about that. And that happens with steel. I heard somebody talking to Bob about getting some cold temperature bolts. These are bolts that don't undergo the ductile to brittle transition temperature when it gets real cold. 1945, we understood totally how to avoid having failures by the ductile to brittle transition. 1945. 1997, the MS Carla failed because the steel's in the ship underwent a ductile to brittle transition. 2002, the MOL Comfort failed because the steels in the ship hull underwent a ductile to brittle transition and the ship hull cracked. Notice that this is 60 years after the solution was known. And the engineering companies, and you know, the people building these ships are pretty skilled engineering firms. And they ignore the ductile to brittle transition. Brittle fracture just simply does not absorb much energy. I was looking at a bin specimen that was tested in one of your castings. It was brittle. Most of the stuff you all make is brittle. You do some ductile iron, but most of it's brittle. This ductile to brittle transition isn't something that's going to bother you. But you need to recognize that you're not going to get much warning before a pump comes apart. Okay? We've got to learn from the past. But I'm convinced that our education system teaches us not to. Any of you ever taken a test in school? If when you were taking the test you stood up and said, I'm having trouble with problem number 3, is there anybody in the class can help me? See, we learn not to seek help. I had a granddaughter. My wife's talking to my daughter on the phone, and Amy's my daughter, she says, Mom, I gotta hang up. Kate just spilled paint all over the kitchen floor. About 3 hours later, I called back. I said, Amy, is everything okay? And she said, yeah. I said, could I speak to Kate? Kate's about 5 at that time. I said, could I speak to Kate? And she said, yes. So I talked to Kate, and I said, Kate, why didn't you ask for help? Kate said, when you're 5 years old, it's hard to ask for help. After that, I'm sitting at my desk out in Savannah River, and I've got a diffusion problem that I'm trying to solve, and vessel function. I hadn't worked with vessel function in 25 years. What did I do? Next door, in the office next to me, sat Thad Adams. Thad knew how to do vessel function. But no, I didn't go over to Thad and say, would you help me with this vessel function? I went to the library, checked out some math books, came back, spent the whole afternoon reviewing how to do a vessel function, finally solved the problem, all right? And I felt proud of myself. And then I thought, I spent 4 hours doing something I could have done in 3 minutes if I'd have walked next door and asked for help. If I'd right next door. The right material very often in problem solving is just in the office on the other side of you. And you need to be sure you use it. You need to be sure you use it. But even if you don't get the right material, even if you get the right material, all the material has defects in them. Next slide. All materials have defects in them. I was giving this lecture at Clemson University. I was talking about all the defects, all materials had defects in it, and some young lady held up her left hand like this, and she said, not all materials have defects. I said, yeah, they do. She said, I know she'd just gotten that thing. I've got a diamond. I've got a diamond, and it doesn't have any defects in it. And I said, yes, it does. She said, no, it doesn't. I said, you look at your diamond certificate, and it will say, no defects apparent at 10x magnification. If you go to 100, you can see defects in that diamond. And then I thought, I remember a time my wife asked me for a diamond pendant. And the way she described it, I knew I couldn't afford it. So I went to the jewelry store and I said to the jeweler, could I see your cubic zircon? And he said, I don't sell cubic zircon. And I said, you don't? He said, no, go to J.C. Penney's, and they sell cubic zircon. And so I went to Penny's. I got a cubic zircon pendant that was as big as it, and I looked at it, and it was beautiful. I took it back to the jewelry store, and I said, why don't you sell these things? He said, put it down there. I put it down there, and he got some pendants about the same size, and he laid them down beside it. He said, can you tell the difference? And I said, no. He said, that's why I don't sell cubic zircon. Unless you do an optical measurements, you can't tell cubic zircon from diamond. And I thought, and I asked this question. I said, guys, how many of you all are planning to give a young lady a diamond? And it's a university, and most of the guys hold up their hand. Young ladies, how many of you all plan to get them? All of them hold up 2 hands. All right? I said, guys, don't do it. Go to J.C. Penney and buy a cubic zircon. Go to the jewelry store and buy a box to put it in. Right? And she'll never know it's not a diamond unless she has it appraised. And you wouldn't want to give a diamond to a woman that didn't trust you. a young man at this meeting stood up and he said, Dr. Louthan, I'm not going to give a diamond to a woman to impress her. I'm going to give a diamond to a woman because I love her. 3 girls got up and went over and set the table. The problem we have in life is all too often we do things to impress people rather than doing things because we love the engineering and science tasks that we have and want to be sure we're providing exactly the right answer. Giving diamonds is the right answer. Giving cubic zircon is skirting around the problem. In 2009, there was a pressure vessel explosion. Fragments of the pressure vessel that weighed over 8,000 pounds traveled over 650 feet in the air. A lot of energy release in that explosion. The vessel did not meet code. They had gotten some special dispensation to use that vessel when it didn't meet code. An ASME suggested but didn't require that they check the vessel. They do some inspections of the vessel. They look to see if stress corrosion cracks or hydrogen embrittlement or something like that was occurring. But they didn't require it, and since they didn't require it, it wasn't done. Now, fortunately, in this explosion, nobody got killed. Nobody got significantly injured. But somebody lost about $2 million pressure vessel because nobody bothered to inspect. Everything we got has defects in it. I hate to say that, but even the castings you made have some defects in them. Right? And you need to recognize that and take care of those things. But even if we take care of the defects, we got to process the material. And so let's look at the next slide. I don't know how many of you all can remember, but there was a time when Georgia had a good football team. This particular year, Alabama had a better football team. That's common. Alabama had a gimpy-kneed quarterback. Name was Joe Namath. Alabama's favored over Georgia in this particular game by 24 points. They're going to clobber Georgia with 30 seconds left to go in the game. Alabama's ahead 13-7. Has the ball on Georgia's 5-yard line. First and goal. Bear Bryant sent in the word. Namath, kneel on the ball. We're going to run out the clock. Namath took the first snap from center, kneeled on the ball. Georgia called timeout. Namath took the second snap from center, kneeled on the ball. Georgia called their last timeout. Now all he's got to do is take the third snap from center, kneel on the ball, the game's over. Goes back in the huddle and he says, guys, everybody in this stadium thinks we're going to kneel on the ball. I want you to float out there in the flat. I'm going to flip you the ball, walk in for a touchdown. 20-7 will look a whole lot better than paper than 13-7 looks. Namath takes a snap from center, steps back, flips the ball out. Georgia defensive halfback steps up and intercepts it. If you put the Pythagorean theorem up and look at it, you know Namath has to run further than that halfback no matter where he's going to catch him. Make matters worse, that halfback's Southeastern Conference record holder in the 100-yard dash. Namath catches him on about the 40-yard line. After the game, they're interviewing Bear Bryant, and they said, Coach, how did your slow, gimpy-kneed quarterback ever catch that fast halfback? And Bear Bryant said, that's easy. That halfback was running for a touchdown. My quarterback was running for his life. You all get processed. I was in Georgia's office. Looked up on the shelf and there was an OSHA manual up there. I guess that's the way you pronounce it. OSHA. There was an OSHA manual up there. OSHA looks at what you're doing. How many of you all appreciate OSHA? That's what I thought. Right? None of us do. We don't appreciate people that say, here's the way you gotta behave to be safe. Right? But most of us appreciate people that test and analyze things to be certain that what we're building's okay. Companies making a large diameter component. They have to have certain properties. And so they go in and they get test coupons to qualify for the materials requirement. The test coupons say material behavior is absolutely okay. The properties are exactly what we want. They're actually a little better than the performance requires. The component failed because of low strength in the thick areas of the system. And the problem is, nobody thought that when I cool a pipe from the outside, the inside cools slower than the outside did. And if I use a thin component, I get fast cooling. And if I use a big thick component, the interior doesn't cool fast. No thick components were tested. No thick coupons were tested. The testing was totally irrelevant to the service. You need to look at what you're doing in processing and be sure that the testing that you do is relevant to the service that material is going to experience. But even if we get these first four things right, we have to worry about putting something together. I can remember when I was 12, my dad took me up to Bluefield, West Virginia. West Virginian hotel there. 12 stories high. I'd never seen a building that big. We're in the lobby of the West Virginian hotel, and there are people there milling around. And this one elderly lady walked up to the wall in the lobby of the West Virginian hotel, and the wall opened up, and she walked into the wall. And the wall closed behind her, and lights on the wall went 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then it went 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and the wall opened up, and a beautiful young blonde stepped out. My daddy grabbed me by the arm. He said, "Come on, boy, we're going to go get your mom and run her through that machine." Building structures. Mississippi River Bridge in 2007. The gusset plates that hold the structure up aren't welded or bolted. They're just sitting there. And so when the temperature changes, they slide back and forth, slide off. 13 people died, 145 injured. Undersized and inadequate supports. Blacksburg High School. Gymnasium my children played basketball in. Big snowstorm comes and the roof collapses. Find out that the place, I am sorry, Mississippi River Bridge did not have non-welded ones. They had undersized ones. The high school, Blacksburg High School, they hadn't welded the gusset plates. They just set them in place. Roof fell down. Lehigh Testing Lab, looking at Blacksburg High School. And they say there had to be collusion between the inspector, the builder, and the architect to get by with that. Had to be collusion. Putting somebody else's life at risk. I don't think that's what they're thinking. I think they're like my dad. They were hoping for a magic machine. They were hoping that something would come along and make what they did okay. Or maybe it was like this one fella I worked for. We're out at Savannah River and we're worried about the nuclear waste storage tanks. And I said to him, I said, "Shell, what's the design lifetime of these nuclear waste storage tanks?" Shell said, "I don't know what the design lifetime is, But we really want these tanks to last for another 5 years, 6 months, and 4 days. And I said, that is unusual thing to have it that precise. Shell said, well, the reason it's that precise is that's when I retire, and I don't care what happens after that. An awful lot of us hope that the magic machines we're using will last for our lifetime, and we don't care much what happens after we've been promoted, or after we've retired, or after we've moved to Tennessee. But even if we don't make any errors in assembly, even if we don't use undersized stuff, even if we weld the gusset plates, we still have to service the material we're going to work with. Corrosion costs this country and all development countries billions. Over half of it could be saved by proper maintenance. Half of it. Proper maintenance. Simply doing what's right. Look at the space shuttle disasters and doing what's right. The O-rings in the Challenger. Engineer from Martin Thykol goes into NASA the morning the Challenger's going to be launched and says those O-rings are likely not to be safe. It's too cold. The rubber's not ductile enough. The seal might not work. We could have a problem if we launch. They call a meeting. A room a little bigger than this room, a few more people in it that are in this room, and they say, we've got to decide whether we're going to launch or not. How many people in here are opposed to launching? 2 Morton Thykol engineers sitting right there. Nobody stands up. No, they've already spoken their piece. They feel like I don't need to scream and holler. They've already spoken their piece. The Columbia. We knew about foam shedding long before a piece of foam caused a problem that brought down the Columbia. But people said this foam coming off is not going to cause any problem. Nobody looked at it seriously, and we just went on. There were engineers like you and me who were concerned. But you have a choice. You can stand out or you can join in. Now, the thing that's bothersome is if the guys had stood up and said, we're not going to use the O-rings, if the guys had stood up and said, we're going to solve the foam shedding problem, they would not be heroes. Because the disasters would not have occurred. And they would have been the busybodies that kept NASA from making progress on the charts. Don't think just because you do what's right is going to make you a hero. You've got to be willing to stand out. One of my students is one of my heroes. I tried to talk her into going to graduate school. She said, Dr. Louthan, I can't go to graduate school. I've been raised by a single mom. I've got 2 siblings. Mom sacrificed a lot to get me through college. I need to give Mom some money. I need to get a job. She went to work for a company making crane arms for use in the North Atlantic. Her first day at work, she's down there, and they go through the crane arm thing. They go to the shipping room and they say, here's some arms we're getting ready to ship. As somebody she's going to ask a question as they tour, and she said, what's the ductile to brittle transition temperature of the metal in those crane arms? They said, we don't know. She said, I got a boyfriend up at Virginia Tech. Boyfriend was Ken Emmer. And I got a boyfriend up at Virginia Tech. Ken lives in Grovetown. Some of you may know him, right? But he'll test the ductile to brittle transition in these steels, and he'll tell us what they are. She calls me, says, Dr. Louthan, I'm probably going to need to go to graduate school. I said, why? She said, well, Ken and I have measured the ductile to brittle transition of the materials in these crane arms, and none of them are suitable for use in the North Atlantic. And I'm going to go into my new company tomorrow, and I'm going to tell them that we can't ship any of these crane arms because we didn't test for the ductile to brittle transition. She said, and they're going to fire me. I said, well, if you need to go to graduate school, you holler, I'll get you in. I never heard from her till football season started, and she drives up in a Porsche. Her company, she thought they were going to fire her, and the company gave her a $50,000 bonus in her first week of work because she saw a problem and was willing to stand out even though she thought it was going to cost her her job. Even though she thought it was going to disrupt her family, she was willing to do what she thought was right and be sure it got accomplished. If we look at the conclusion for this talk, we'll see that there are 6 fundamental steps for success. Avoid the fundamental causes of failure. You all do all the things. You select materials. You design stuff. You process the material. You inspect the material. You assemble the material. And then you service the material. I heard you're going to Chile to service some material that you sold. All you got to do is learn what's right, do what's right. Focus on that. Don't focus on profit. Don't focus on schedule. Focus on here is what needs to be done. Stuff falls apart because we don't have enough humility. We don't discuss enough. We don't learn from the past. We need to proceed normally when we're under a whole lot of pressure. We need to avoid shortcuts. Georgia Iron Works, the success of this company doesn't depend on the company. It depends on you all. And 2 years from now, 3 years from now, you don't want somebody standing up. You're going to talk on why stuff falls apart and using a pump you made as an example of a failure. You want to be able to say, we were successful because we avoided the 6 fundamental causes of failure. We talked to each other. We interacted with each other. We asked for help when we needed help. We gave advice when advice needed to be given. Thank you for your attention. I hope you got something out of this little lecture. And Bob, I appreciate you inviting me to do this, and George, I appreciate you all putting up with me.
All right, so Bob's gonna be around a little bit if you want to ask some questions or anything, but thank y'all for coming, and we'll do it again sometime.
I've had people, when I used to ask, does anybody have any questions? And people have told me, says, it's more like asking a question about a sermon than it is asking a question about a technical matter. But I do appreciate your attendance. I noticed it didn't but two of you go to sleep.
Paul, you break stuff at work all the time, right? Break stuff at work all the time, right? Break stuff at work all the time, right? Break stuff at work all the time, right?